Now that we've talked about strengths, weaknesses, and a bit on professional branding, we're going to talk a little bit about professional planning. Now, to be clear at the beginning of this conversation or this session, we're not creating an entire curriculum on strengths, professional branding, weaknesses, and professional planning. Because in coaching, much of what a coach and a client will work on with those areas is going to be very nuanced to the client. And there are plenty of resources out there, but the purpose of these videos is to look at certain types of questions and patterns or processes that might be extra valuable to cover as part of professional branding as a whole. So, strengths, weaknesses, and now professional planning, assuming that the client has a good understanding of what their longer term purpose and vision might be, and now they have a bit of an understanding of some of their strengths, maybe some of their weaknesses. You can support a client further on their overall professional planning. And one thing that coaching does very well is it creates a space where the professional planning can not only be worked on and built, but practiced as well. Everything that happens in these sessions about strengths, weaknesses, and professional planning, it's building muscles, it's building awareness of the vocabulary the client would like to use, and they get to practice these things. And you will likely have a moment or two where they can role play. You can be the manager, skip level manager, or whoever it is, an interviewer, and you can offer them a space to practice. You might play back for them what they practiced with you. Nice short role plays where they can experience sharing their strengths, weaknesses, and what they'd like to see in the longer term. Part of that sharing of the longer term is the professional planning, and a good way to look at, or rather explore, professional planning is to consider it as a narrative or a story. As we talked about before, I just want to chase my dreams, go pursue your passions and drop everything else. That approach doesn't work very well, and especially it wouldn't work when having a conversation, a professional conversation with one's manager, skip level boss, or interviewer. Instead, we want to paint a picture of where we are here today together and where we'd like to be in the future as a team. One thing that I always come back to in my philosophy as a coach is serve the customer. As a coach, I'm always looking to serve the customer of the client, but it's more, I'm bringing that up as a mentality that we can offer to our clients, a framework, mental model that we can offer our clients to better see the interviewing, the relationship that they have with their manager, the conversations they have with their skip level boss as an exchange between two people who have needs and who have wants. So when a client goes to their skip level manager and they are talking about the future, they're not there just for themselves. They're there to help create buy-in for the customer, their skip level manager, to tell a story about how we can build something better together. And as they have awareness of their strengths, their weaknesses, and the vision for the future, they're able to articulate that very well. As a coach helps a client craft their professional story, we want to consider the broad vision of this client and the target organization, if they're interviewing, or the skip level manager, and of course, the manager. We want to help this client be ready to have a conversation with those people, not at those people. They're not presenting the elevator pitch and just pitching it, but they're playing a game together. So, what is the broad vision of this organization that they're going to be interviewing with, or the organization they are working with? How do they see themselves now? And how do they see themselves 5 years from now serving that broader vision? More importantly, perhaps, how does that client's interviewer, manager, or skip level boss see themselves in the next 5 years? Taking those longer term visions and perspectives into account, what are the shared needs, the shared wants, the shared areas of enthusiasm and excitement, the shared concerns, the shared focus points? that can be brought up in a short conversation about where the client sees themselves partnering with that interviewer, skip level manager, or manager. So build something bigger. Next, the client needs to clarify and be able to articulate what their sales pitch is, what is their intention, and what qualities do they bring to the table that will help that partnership move forward successfully. As we look together at the next 3 years, I'm imagining you'll probably be moving into this type of role and responsibility. And I'm wondering how I need to grow as well. And I imagine that right now my work is heavily focused in these areas, but I am finding more of a draw towards these leadership areas and communication areas. And I would like to consider partnering with you to build up those skills more so that I can support the person who steps into the role you might be leaving in the next 2, 3, 4 years. As you step up and another steps into that position, I want to be ready to support that person as well. And here's some qualities that I have that I think will help me. I would love to hear your thoughts on this picture of the future that we're telling, or the story of the next 2 or 3 years. The ability to articulate what might happen and how my role and my intentions and my qualities could benefit that process is a great way to get that buy-in from the client's manager, their skip level boss, or the interviewer. And even the interviewer, even though they are not the ones directly doing the work, the storytelling of where I see this company going and I can see this position maybe leading into these other positions. My manager would likely move into this position long term. And I am curious how I might over time be able to move my current work expectations over towards my strengths in, not right now, but maybe in 3 years. What opportunities are there in your company that allows people to do that type of career preparation? The ability to articulate that in an interview is really valuable because it demonstrates you are not here for the job, you're here for the trajectory, the story. You're here to serve your manager and your skip level manager in their path, because their paths create your path to success. Now, as coaches, we understand that it's not always that clear cut. Sometimes in my own experience, coaching someone around these topics, it's the first time they've ever experienced this type of coaching before, these kind of ideas before, the first time they've had these perspectives, and is very powerful in getting them on the right track. But beyond that, the coach will need to ask the challenging questions that they might also not be aware of about, what might be your manager's reaction if you were to bring it up in that way. How would you want to prepare yourself if they give you pushback? What might that pushback be? And what alternatives would you like to offer? And what would be your bottom line? And so on. All of those questions, that's all part of the coaching process. And you need to be ready to facilitate the messiness of that part of the career planning. One more thing to say about the longer term planning. As a client is looking to share the ideal path, and they are also being challenged by the coach to prepare for some alternatives, they need to be ready to talk about changes in position, but also changes in the way they spend their time, their responsibility, and things they might be able to do developmentally to be prepared. So instead of saying, I want to be ready for that job in the next year or two, the client and the coach can work on the language that talks about the path to that. Over the next 6 months, if I'm really serious about that 3-year dream and goal, I think it'd be very important for me to have this type of learning experience to, let's say, present once to the executive team on a small thing, and to be able to get your feedback and to have a few more experiences like that over the next 6 months, so that I have a basis for growth from there that will help me prepare for the next 3 years. It's not, let me get that job, because I think it'd be great for us. But that might be a good path, and here's my proposal for how we can begin testing it out to get there. We're not looking for a commitment to the long term. We're looking for an offer or an acceptance from the manager and the skip level manager to allow the client to test the waters to make their case, to share their story in live action. The work of helping a client create their professional brand and to act on that professional brand is so valuable. And yet, keep in mind, this could be an entire 6-month, 12-session contract, and it can be very messy. And you cannot take responsibility for the way the process goes. You can only do your very best to help the client think of themselves, what they really want, and to prepare for the challenges of making their case and telling their story. But it is their story, and it's so important to let your agenda go into the background and to highlight what they want and help them articulate that very well.